We're starting a little differently this morning. Sunny.
Joy Bahar was delivering her usual playful quips on The View, and in an instant, millions of viewers were watching every move. She had no idea the storm that was about to descend. The studio went quiet, the air heavy with anticipation as the audience leaned in, sensing that something significant was unfolding. Nearby, longtime colleague and committed racial justice advocate Sunny Hostin withdrew slightly, her enigmatic comment casting a shadow over Joy in a tense moment. That remark would echo far beyond the studio. It said that Melania Trump's controversial $100 million lawsuit was sparked when Sunny suggested that Joy's jokes and commentary had crossed a line. Joy's face froze, absorbing the weight of the words as the tension in the room became impossible to ignore.
There could be something in my family history that would be disappointing. Negative, yes. I thought I was going to have that kind of moment. And Skip had asked me to do it for a long time. And I finally decided to do it because I thought it'd be helpful for my children and my children's children to know what their real history was, you know? But what I found out was that my mother's family, while they are Puerto Rican, they actually originate from Spain. And the reason that they moved to Puerto Rico is because the slave trade had been sort of canceled in Spain and then Curacao, and then they moved all of their slaves to Puerto Rico.
The idea that a lawsuit against the former First Lady could hinge on years of clever jokes and sharp commentary was startling. The accusation wasn't spelled out explicitly, but the implication was unmistakable. Joy wasn't about to back down. Turning to Sunny directly, she asked in a calm yet unwavering tone, "Are you suggesting this lawsuit stems from my remarks?" The studio seemed to shrink around them. The word echoed through the room, tensions rising as issues were pressed with unusual intensity. Everyone could feel that what had begun as an ordinary morning on The View had transformed into something historic. Live television at its most raw and revealing, the moment carried a strange intimacy, a mix of exhilaration and unease that went beyond simple debate. Sunny paused, her expression hardening, then pressed further, her anger clear. Joy readied herself to respond, but questions lingered. Why had Sunny taken such a daring stand in the first place? The answer lay in a shocking family secret, one that suddenly recast Sunny from a challenger into a critic. That revelation ignited tensions that had been quietly simmering for years, adding a deeper layer to the confrontation. As the cameras continued rolling, viewers both at home and in the studio were riveted, leaning forward in anticipation to decipher the meaning behind Sunny's enigmatic remark. What had started as playful commentary had escalated into a moment of reckoning, a clash that promised to leave its mark for years. The stage was set for a confrontation fierce enough to reshape relationships, challenge assumptions, and forever alter the atmosphere of the show.
My father's family, his family, all slaves, then sharecroppers. But once they got their freedom, one of my ancestors, his name is Dean Cummings, and we use, my maiden name is Cummings, and we use the name Dean in our family. A lot of cousins are named Dean. I have this book of life. Thank you, Skip. Yeah. It's very thick. I have an ancestor, my third great grandfather, immediately registered to vote, even though he was illiterate.
The stakes had never been higher, and the tension on The View was far from over. Sunny Hostin, long recognized for her unwavering advocacy of social justice, had never hesitated to call out historical injustices and systemic inequality. But during a revealing appearance on PBS's Finding Your Roots, she stunned viewers by disclosing that her third great-grandfather had been a slaveholder. Speaking firmly, she made it clear that forgiveness for past transgressions had no place in her moral framework. The revelation sparked a swift and intense public reaction. Fans and critics alike questioned how someone so vocal about historical accountability could seemingly overlook the troubling legacy in her own family. Social media buzzed with allegations of hypocrisy as many struggled to reconcile Sunny's moral rigor with this newfound family history. For both Sunny and her audience, who had followed her passionate critiques of racism, the discovery was jarring. Her previously unshakable moral authority now seemed vulnerable, leaving many disappointed. And the scrutiny was only beginning. Amid growing tension, Joy Bahar found herself at the center of a brewing storm. Known for her sharp humor and fearless commentary, Joy had never avoided controversial subjects. But the recent events threatened to upend her usual repartee. In a live webcast, Simmering emotions boiled over. Sunny, visibly irritated by criticism and public backlash, made an enigmatic comment suggesting that Joy's jokes and remarks had gone too far, words that would later be linked to Melania Trump's $100 million lawsuit. The studio fell silent as viewers leaned in, sensing the weight of the moment. Joy's expression tightened as she absorbed the implication. The accusation wasn't direct, yet its meaning struck deeply. Refusing to let it pass, Joy turned to Sunny with a firm, unwavering voice. "Are you saying this lawsuit is a result of my remarks?" The room seemed to constrict around them, the tension thickening as narratives clashed and the stakes escalated. Sunny paused, then pressed forward, intensifying the debate and ensuring the conversation would be remembered for years to come. The entire studio was in stunned disbelief as the news broke. What had begun as a routine morning on The View had transformed into a historic moment in live television. More than a debate, it was a charged, intimate event. The cameras rolled, the studio audience leaned forward, and viewers at home were riveted, eager to decipher the meaning behind Sunny Hostin's cryptic remark. Joy Bahar, prepared for confrontation, sensed that the stakes had never been higher and that the drama was far from over. The fallout from Sunny's shocking family revelation ignited social media almost instantly, but the response was anger, not empathy. How could someone who had long demanded accountability from public figures seemingly overlook the fact that her own ancestor had been a slaveholder? Criticism came from all sides. Both detractors and former supporters who had once praised Sunny's moral clarity now questioned her integrity. The backlash didn't stop online. Fox News host Greg Gutfeld seized the moment, dedicating an entire broadcast to criticizing Sunny's response and labeling her hypocritical for holding others to a standard she seemed unwilling or unable to meet herself. He painted her as a vocal advocate for values who faltered under scrutiny when confronted with her own family's history. The narrative intensified. Social media exploded with viral posts, memes, and trending hashtags lampooning Sunny's perceived double standard. Her once unshakable reputation as a fierce defender of justice now appeared vulnerable. But the real danger wasn't just public criticism, it was what lay ahead. Behind the scenes, a far more consequential crisis was brewing. Sunny's misstep, hinting on live television that Joy Bahar's jokes and remarks had fueled the narrative behind Melania Trump's looming $100 million lawsuit, would thrust Joy directly into the crosshairs. The tension was palpable, and the ramifications threatened to affect not only Sunny's credibility, but the future of The View itself. Sunny Hostin had long built her reputation on The View as a fearless advocate for social justice, never shying away from calling out historical injustices or systemic prejudice. But everything shifted during her appearance on the PBS program Finding Your Roots. In a startling revelation, she disclosed that her third great-grandfather had been a slaveholder. Speaking with her usual firmness, Sunny insisted that forgiveness for past misdeeds was not an option. Yet, the revelation stunned both her and the audience who had just witnessed her impassioned critiques of institutional racism. Rather than confront the news head-on, Sunny treated it as a sad historical fact, a product of its time. The decision drew immediate scrutiny. How could someone so vocal about accountability seemingly overlook the troubling history of her own family? Friends, critics, and the broader public demanded answers, and the response was swift and intense. Questions arose. Why was someone who consistently held others to high moral standards now avoiding responsibility for her ancestors' actions? Accusations of hypocrisy quickly flooded social media. The criticism was not limited to political opponents. Even her loyal followers, who had long admired her unwavering moral compass, began to feel uneasy about her handling of such a profound revelation. As doubts about her integrity grew, another storm began forming, one that would soon place co-host Joy Bahar at the center of a confrontation unlike anything The View had ever seen. The fallout from Sunny's bombshell revelation triggered a rapid, merciless social media explosion. How could someone who demanded accountability from others so openly ignore the dark legacy in her own family? Critics from across the spectrum weighed in, including former supporters who questioned her moral clarity. Sunny acknowledged the tension, admitting her potential hypocrisy, but Fox News commentator Greg Gutfeld seized the moment, dedicating an entire segment to her misstep. He portrayed her as someone who championed values yet faltered when confronted with her own family's history. The online backlash escalated quickly. Viral posts, memes, and trending hashtags dissected her remarks. mocked her tweets, and painted a picture of a double. Standard, what began as a personal revelation had now evolved into a full-blown crisis of character, shaking both Sunny's credibility and the show itself. This was no ordinary quarrel. It had become a full-blown character crisis. While Sunny Hostin, the fierce defender of justice, tried to navigate the backlash, an even greater storm was brewing, one that threatened not only her reputation, but the very integrity of The View. At the center of it all was Melania Trump, preparing to file a lawsuit that could implicate everyone on the show. Though details of the $100 million suit remain murky, the lawsuit was unavoidable given the media frenzy surrounding Sunny's family revelations and the wave of accusations that had been levied against her. This was far more serious than a typical celebrity dispute. Greg Gutfeld seized the moment, relentlessly criticizing Sunny while linking Melania's potential legal action to Sunny's dismissive response to her own family's past. Then, on live television, Sunny made a critical misstep. In a moment tinged with thinly veiled frustration, she implied that Joy Bahar's on-air jokes and commentary had helped fuel the narrative that led to Melania's lawsuit. The implication was unmistakable. The narrative was devastating, and Sunny appeared to be deflecting responsibility for her own family history. Suddenly, The View was no longer just a talk show. It had become the epicenter of a media firestorm, complete with accusations of hypocrisy, personal betrayal, and looming legal peril. The audience held its collective breath as Joy processed the remark, her eyes fixed on Sunny, and the room hung on her reaction. This was not a joke, nor a casual quip. Steeling herself, Joy's expression shifted from shock to resolute determination. "Are you saying I am to blame for Melania Trump's lawsuit?" she asked, her voice steady yet cutting through the tension. The room tightened around them as the weight of her words settled. Sunny hesitated, fully aware of the gravity of her implication, but the damage had already been done. Without waiting for a response, Joy delivered a precise and pointed reply. On live television, she reminded Sunny of all the times the show had given her a platform to denounce discrimination and injustice, highlighting the glaring inconsistency in Sunny's accusation. Sunny had always been quick to hold others accountable, but when confronted with the complicated history of her own family, she hesitated, unable or unwilling to measure herself by the same standards she demanded from others. The question lingered in the studio. Why was she exempt from her own rules? The audience stared in disbelief, but Joy didn't need to raise her voice to command attention. Cameras caught Sunny's eyes darting nervously, her attempts to evade the moment only highlighting her unpredictability. Joy pressed forward, relentless, demanding to know why she was being drawn into a lawsuit that had nothing to do with her, as if a joke could trigger a $100 million legal battle. The line had been drawn. This was no playful banter. This was a confrontation, a test of courage and accountability. The question now was whether Sunny would stand firm or buckle under pressure. For the first time, Sunny Hostin sat frozen, clearly startled by Joy's pointed remarks. The studio, usually a haven for casual chatter, had transformed into a tense battlefield. Every eye was on Sunny, waiting for a response, but she remained silent. Joy's calm, measured voice cut through the tension, each word landing like a strike. "You've spent years holding people accountable for systemic problems," as she said, "yet when it comes to your family's history, it becomes too difficult. And now you're holding me responsible for a lawsuit that has nothing to do with me." The silence that followed was deafening. Sunny's face tightened, her lips moving in frustration, a mix of anger, uncertainty, and embarrassment written plainly across her features. Behind the scenes, the crew scrambled, caught off guard by an argument that had unfolded unscripted, live on air. Whispers rippled through the audience. "Defend yourself or own up to it." Meanwhile, social media erupted as clips of the exchange spread rapidly, leaving no doubt the producers were in a state of panic, scrambling to decide whether to let the confrontation continue or cut to commercial. But the energy in the studio was magnetic, too compelling to interrupt. Cameras captured every second. Joy leaning back slightly, maintaining her composure, yet her eyes never leaving Sunny. Each glance, each pause amplified the tension. What had begun as lighthearted banter had escalated into a live battle of accountability, morality, and public perception unfolding in real time. Meanwhile, online, the storm erupted. Hashtags began trending instantly as viewers dissected every word, every expression. Clips circulated of Sunny's uneasy glances, the hesitation in her voice, and Joy's unwavering insistence that the rules she had long enforced on others also applied to her co-host. Social media lit up with debate. Some condemned Joy for publicly shaming Sunny, accusing her of turning the show into a personal battlefield. Others cheered her courage, praising her for holding a fellow host accountable, refusing to let hypocrisy slide unnoticed. Inside the studio, the atmosphere was electric. Crew members whispered to each other, aware that what they were witnessing wasn't a typical segment. It was a historic moment for the show. The audience, both in the studio and at home, sat on the edge of their seats, feeling the gravity of the confrontation. Joy's words had drawn Sunny into a corner, exposing not only her discomfort, but also the larger inconsistencies in her public persona. This clash wasn't simply about a comment or a joke. It was about accountability, legacy, and the blurred lines between personal history and public responsibility. As the cameras rolled, it became undeniable. This argument was far from over. Joy had drawn a line, and whether Sunny would rise to the challenge or falter under scrutiny would shape the narrative for weeks to come, both on The View and across social media. The tension, the drama, and the stakes had never been higher,